call.
Trustee Rubin.
Yes.
Trustee Hallwag.
Yes.
Trustee Malopoulos.
Yes.
This is public comment time. Is there anyone who would like to comment? Can't scare me, Chief. All right, hearing none. Could minutes. Anybody have any comments? Please let me know. Let us know. Otherwise, could I get a motion to approve?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All right, we approved the minutes, and that brings us to our review of our financials. So any update on whether or not Cook County is giving us any more funds?
I wish we had better news.
I'm going to do the presentation this evening. So to start us off, we are $2.3 million less than prior year in our tax receipts, which is only 81.1% of our budget. Since the two disbursements that we received in the end of December, which were about $2.3 million each, we have not received anything else from the county to date. Just a reminder, we do have up to 60 days after the end of the fiscal year in order to accrue those taxes back as receipts for 2025 if you receive them within the next 60 days. There is growing concern that this situation is going to maybe possibly even affect the next first installment bills as well that are coming up in March. So we have to be conscious
Can we
of
just
that.
give them a calculator and remind them it's 55% of that last bill they saw?
I think part of the issue is the limits to distributions that were received were just blind calculations, percentages of the levy that we requested. So now the county has to go back and allocate who paid and what was distributed to each taxing body and essentially do a true up of all the accounting in processing those payments. So they were collecting payments in, but didn't have the ability to understand how much should go to Glencoe.
So in other words, my bill that comes to my house, you're saying if I was late in paying these taxes or something like that, that would show up on the first installment bill that I would get normally next month?
I'm sorry.
Because that's what I don't understand. Why can't they send this first bill for 25 taxes payable in 26? It's just 55%.
It should be the same.
It
shouldn't matter.
It should be that easy.
None of that.
Yeah, I think what we've started to hear from the staff is that they are relying upon the system they're seeking to rely upon the new system to actually generate, which is why they fell apart with the second installment, that it couldn't generate the disbursements. So they went backwards. I think they're playing it cautious. That's what I think they're just not ready to do it.
So what could happen in theory is if they just took a percentage of the levy that we did, but they didn't actually collect that, there could be a true up process where they've over distributed.
I don't think is the bill, from what I've read,
We're not disagreeing with you.
Yep.
All we're saying is it's not our process and we're guaranteeing the county's going to screw it up. So I'm not disagreeing with
So
your
I'm trying to figure out.
You're not figure out. No, you're not wrong.
Muddle this for a year.
Yes.
It shouldn't affect getting the first bill.
It shouldn't, if the calculation doesn't change, but the distribution is the problem. Because they haven't been able to track what
They're
they've
afraid they'll
actually
get the money and have a
distributed.
bigger in other words, a bigger mess than they already have.
I think if you have appeals that are on record, if the committee recalls, we've talked about this before, it's a little bit of a chaotic process with Cook County. So when you all pay your bills on time, the county collects that money and then they distribute it to the village. Some days it's a penny, some days it's $4 million. And if we'll use Joe as an example, if Joe appealed his taxes and he did not pay it, or he disputed it and got a refund, that will be deducted from our contributions.
Right.
None of that is being tracked right now because
get
the
that.
back half of their accounting.
I understand all of that.
So the calculation of the bills is going to be fine because it's a straightforward issue. But their backlog of accounting is just going to continue to get.
Were they in theory waiting for like my appeal and everything, all these things to be settled before they do their final amount?
I just want to point out for the record, none of what we're saying right now has any basis in fact. We are guessing,
Right.
honestly,
This is
we are
fair enough.
guessing
Right.
at what the county is trying to work out.
Okay.
And we're not trying to be
All right.
combative or dismissive.
No, I get it.
I don't
get it.
think any of us have an idea of exactly how this is going to happen because there is no clarity coming from the county. And so, we can continue to ask questions of the county. I will tell you, we've done so. And the information that we've gotten has been 50% accurate and 50% raw. And so even with this kind of thing, we're now in this situation. Again, we're in a better place than many of our other sister governments. There are school districts out there that are basically taking out
Yeah.
payday loans to pay their employees while they wait for these disbursements. There was an article in the Tribune today that CPS and the suburban school districts are calculating the dollar loss at 125 million today. So as this continues, they have every incentive to get those first installment bills out. But there's also probably going to be some question with respect to how the mortgage companies are handling escrows, because that's all messed up, and how the individuals who are paying their bills themselves have just paid the second installment and now are going to get a brand new bill in the mail. Like there's all sorts of weird stuff that happens when the county screws up the schedule. And that's why, this March 1, October 1 schedule was August 1, sorry. March 1, August 1 schedule was so sacrosanct to the county board president. If you remember, when she was first elected back in 2011, that was the first thing that was the priority to fix, was to get the tax bills back on the regular cycle.
Right.
This was a common occurrence, but even since 2011, this probably happened to us at this point 5 or 6 times, where it's been a mess. So we're gonna keep trying to get as much information as we can, but nobody's
Sorry.
really given us a good story yet.
No, in fact,
Unfortunately.
I just want to make sure I wasn't missing something.
we did get information from the county that we should have gotten additional distributions by now, and we haven't seen it. So it's, we're guessing and contingency planning, quite honestly.
Are they each other? I mean, is the assessor saying, the treasurer is saying?
A whole lot of going on. Yeah, nobody's taking credit or blame at this point.
Okay, sorry for the interruption.
No,
that's
those are
fine.
fair questions. I wish we had better answers for
Yeah, it's
you.
not like it's not 50+% of our budget.
In theory, we could ask our county board, commissioner, but.
The first, according to Google, the first installment has been pushed back to August or April 1st. So I just got an email from somebody that made me feel like I should double check that. And apparently that was posted to the county's webpage at some point in the last day or so. So we know now it won't be February 1st
Okay.
for sure.
All right.
Whether it's April 1st, I'm holding my breath.
April first is an excellent day, right?
It's really, in this particular circumstance, yeah. Yeah.
All right, so moving on. Just going back to just the 2 disbursements, we did credit those to the general and debt funds. If you remember, we did have to loan the debt fund some funds at the end of the year to be able to meet our debt payments. And so we have fixed the accounting for that, make sure that we paid back the debt service and that that's paid back to them. So we're all good there. We did have to make a transfer to the police pension fund in the amount of $775,000 because we have not received disbursements to the police pension fund, which are specifically directed there yet. And so we will, as soon as we get those funds, make that repayment back to the general fund. I'm gonna let Nikki kind of add a little bit more context to this, but we did do a interest cost impact of delay calculation. Basically taking what dollar amounts we pulled out of our investment pools, mutual funds, put it into the general in order to cover our operating costs, and looked at how much interest we could have earned and how much interest we did earn. And one good thing is that we have earned a very nice return in our general fund to kind of match or was close to the investments. And so the number we calculated today is about a $20,000 loss related to the interest. But one thing to say is that that's through December. Until we receive these additional funds from the county, we are going to have to continue, especially now hearing that the bills are going to be later, continue to be able to pull from those investments in order to cover our operating costs if we're not receiving disbursements from the county. Which is just something to note on that.
Is it fair to say that the reason this is a disaster is because we have these balances?
It is. So if maybe you'll recall, and you, President Roan as well, we do have a little over 5 million parked in the iPrime government funds that is somewhat liquid. And then we also utilize other local government investment pools to essentially invest our idle cash while we don't need it. That's where our reserves are invested. So we did have to draw down in a series. We tried to draw down a little bit at a time in hopes that the county would come through for us. But there were a series of transfers where we liquidated cash in September, October, November, and December. So we went back and calculated the opportunity cost of what we liquidated versus where it ended up. And it's 20,000 and counting and compounded.
Yeah.
Because we haven't transferred any of that money back into investment accounts until we know that
Right.
we will indeed get additional tax contributions.
So that's helpful. I was making a slightly different point, which is the real disaster comes if we were just waiting for this money to come in, paying stuff.
Yes.
But because we've been we are conservative and we have balances, we're able to do this without having to go borrow at
Absolutely.
5% or whatever. And that is the answer to residents who say, what are you taking extra money for? I should have my money. What do you need it for? And the answer is, it's important for the village to do this so that we can be ready for, you hope rainy day, you hope unusual disasters, and they're not even unusual.
Yeah, this is an unfortunate.
Yeah.
And successfully avoid financing fees for them. Yeah, we're certainly in better shape than the school districts.
So moving on to sales tax, we are currently more than prior year in collections at 100.9% of our budget and September sales that are received in December. A note for the grocery tax for 2026 that went into effect January 1st. We will see the first receipts of that in April, so we will report on that for you into the treasurer's report. Building permits, personal property replacement tax, and sewer charges were higher than prior year and monthly budget this month. We did make a building permit fee transfer from the general fund to the capital fund in the amount of $450,000. This is in compliance with our financial policies. And if the board recalls, this is due to additional permit revenue from the Forest Edge subdivision. We took the net of what the additional revenue was specific to those properties minus payments for the expenditures of the resources we use. So having additional plan reviewers and things like that. And calculated a transfer of $450,000 of those revenues was appropriate. Those funds will sit in the capital fund and be used for future capital investments as needed. Last is 2026 ambulance billing. We do have a new process that we've elected to start doing for the first quarter, and we're going to see how it works and maybe extend it for the rest of the year. Basically, Glencoe is a large fraction of our billing goes to commercial insurance for ambulance services. And so the insurance company does this practice of holding the bills for up to 30 days and then submitting to the insurance with the idea that the deductible would go towards the person's like hospital bill and not their ambulance billing service first. And so we are going to, we increased our ambulance bill fees this year. If you do remember that, we're going to try this for the first quarter of doing this hold for 30 days and then doing the billing to see if we get a better return. And if it is successful, because we have a high commercial insurance that's paying those bills, we will continue on the practice for the next year. We can change it at any time, but we've elected to at least try this first quarter for now. Moving on to the next slide. For general fund expenditures are higher than prior year and at 89.5% of budget. We are still processing 2025 expenditure payments. That is what is on your January board list for Thursday is all 2025 payments. A note is that starting in February, we will start processing only 2026 payments at the board. We still do have some early check processes for 2025 expenditures that are lagging and coming in, and those will all be appropriately paid up through the first week in February and counted towards 2025. So that number may go up a little bit based on more expenditures that are coming in. Annual revenue projections, revenue only performance versus budget, we're at a deficit of 1.5 million, and that is partially due to the obvious property tax delay. And we have also, just to balance this number out, received some revenues that have outperformed. And so that's even out that number to the $1.5 million. The annual projected fund surplus deficit for expenditures and revenue is for general fund $3.8 million right now. We did have a $4.8 million drawdown planned. So this will decrease with that 60-day accrual of receipts that is going to be happening through this through January and February.
So if we actually receive miracle of miracles, the whole 2.4 million that we actually anticipate getting, when the money flows through, that 3.8 would be reduced by that amount.
Correct.
And one of the reasons is we just, because of all the projects that got delayed, deferred, had this issue,
Yes.
that issue.
And just from overperforming revenues too.
Right, some overperforming revenue, but
Yes.
also a chunk of projects that got delayed.
Yes, correct. Or came in at just at a lower cost.
It may not be a 1-for-1 since we are still processing expenditures
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
We still have some big
Yeah.
capital invoices.
Just round numbers.
Last invoices coming in.
So fund reserves at the end of the month are at $12 million and 44% of fund balance. Moving on to the water fund, volumetric revenue was higher than prior year at 113.1% of our budget. That's about $288,000 over the prior year. Fixed charge is higher than prior year at 98.7% of your budget, about $23,000 higher than prior year. Expenditures are less than prior year at 80.9% of budget. Just looking at revenue alone, it's $550,000 over, and then adding in the expenditures, we're at a drawdown of about $1 million for water fund, and that planned drawdown was $2.8 million. Again, due to some deferred projects, some projects that came in lower costs, that's where that difference is coming there. Also, we have a little bit of the revenue, the $550,000 to offset that as well. Fund reserves at the month end are at $3.3 million, which is 54.7%. And I'll turn it over to Stella for the golf club.
End of the year, we did end up 5,700 rounds over our budget. I think we underestimated the loyalty of our golfers.
Yeah.
But they were willing to endure our temporary amenities and construction to play their favorite golf course. Our audited estimated NOI is 242,000. And that is with paying 349,000 tree mitigation.
Yeah.
So would have been 591,000.
That's,
We haven't subtracted yet the extra 250 their equipment is for.
that's out of the bond fund. So it's not coming out of the general revenues.
So it was a great year. Clubhouse update, you have come by, it does look different. They put the trusses on the top. The underground plumbing is continuing. The perimeter walls and cold form trusses will continue for about 3 or 4 more weeks. The mechanical, electrical, and plumbing subcontractors have begun pouring through the precast concrete for work between the basement and the first floor. That's happening. Geothermal field is almost completed. They have to make their final connections. There have been delays in that because of the weather. And the new gas service is expected to be installed next week. And as a reminder, the gas service is only for the grill in the kitchen. The rest of the building is going to be electric. And a friend's update, really great numbers through this year. So in 2025, we had 192,000 new gifts and pledges. that were received. With our previous pledges that were also received in 2025, we are at $487,000 that came into Friends this year. So they're doing very well. They had an email blast campaign and some private events that helps push that along. And as we get closer to the clubhouse actually going to be erected and people can see it, we're going to start pushing for more naming and donor opportunities.
Excellent.
That's it.
That's great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, going on to our next slide for debt service and MFP capital and other personnel. Debt service, as expected, at 99.9% of our budget. Capital projects expenditures were at 35.1% of our budget, and that's mainly due to a large portion of the golf fund that was budgeted and has not been spent in 2025. But we may still have at least one more payment, I believe, towards WB Olson. Coming up. Pension funds expenditures are on target. And then for personnel, we are higher than prior year, but we are under the annual budget. And that is due to having the vacancies in public safety where we are getting higher in our less vacancies, higher with our amount of people that are actually working for us. But they have started later in the year. So we have budgeted for the whole salary. So that's one portion of it. Also because we have the vacancy for the IT manager that also has an impact. So you'll see that in salaries and in benefits, those came in under budget. Moving on to our economic indicators and other updates. We really have we really have no new concerns for communications with price increases. Everything's kind of staying steady right now. Nothing new on tariffs that we've heard. We still have that uncertain employment environment. Our commodities are currently lower than prior year and at 83.8% of the budget. Contractual services are still lower than prior year and at 86% of budget. We have had our preliminary phone call with the auditors. The next step is to have preliminary field work with them. That will be sometime coming up here in the last 2 weeks in January. And then we'll have our final field work in usually the end of February, early March. They'll be on site. And then we're going to do our final budget presentation for the 2025 financials at the June board meeting as usual. Do you have any questions? Okay. With that, we will move on to the community investment update. Turn it over to Monica.
So for January 2026, we're starting out with 2 requests from the village board. Both of them are transportation related. The first one is the engineering design preparation for our street resurfacing improvements. We put together a preliminary scope, basically the total length of roadways that we're looking to resurface in both 27 and 28 that meets the budget that we've have outlined in the 10-year CIP. And so they're going to be beginning this year to do engineering design preparation and create 2 separate bid packages for us to then execute resurfacing in both 27 and 28. And then the second one is our phase 1 engineering STP streets contract. It's with the same company. Both of these are contracts with HLR. We have a long-standing history with doing transportation projects. This contract is going to be funded through our MFT funds. It's going to help us put together phase 1 engineering for both Green Bay Road and Dundee Road. Both of these roads qualify for funding through the STP program. It's STP is Surface Transportation Planning. It's federally funded money available to us. We've submitted the applications. Actually, HLR helped us submit the applications this past fall. We'll find out in, I think, sometime this spring, but formally, I think by June or July, whether or not we've been prioritized for funding. But they're going to help us get that phase 1 engineering done, which qualifies us to get the funding. And then the funding would be for phase 2 engineering and then construction as well in future years. So this is for the next 5 years in their funding cycle. So we're just kind of trying to get in the process, get on there and hope that they can help us move along the resurfacing for this project. Any questions on those two? Yes.
Hey, thank you for your presentation. You mentioned that we're designing 2 years worth of roads this year. Have we thought about maybe going out to bid, one bid package for the 2 years work, maybe trying to gain some kind of scale and
We
I
could do
mean-
that.
2-year program, but one bid.
I think we're gonna be coming back, I think at some point later this year to kind of talk about our overall resurfacing program in general, trying to look at it in more of a cycle-based program. As we've discussed it right now, I think breaking it into the 2 phases is a lesser impact on community year over year. And it would allow us to kind of be more flexible. Funding that we need, but I think they're,
like going to bid
yes,
for 2 years worth of work and still
Oh,
do it 2 years.
but
not
awarding it over.
Awarding it 1 year and doing.
That's a great suggestion. So I think that's something that
Just
we'll need to,
Not doing it in
continue
1
to
year,
vet.
doing it in 2 years, one contractor doing it like 2 year.
but awarding 2 years worth of
Or the
work.
contractor not to.
Yeah, why would they not bid?
Yeah.
No, they would do it. in
There's some
2 years,
risk.
better, right?
There could be some
Yeah.
risk associated with
Yeah.
materials
Especially if we're not,
costs.
yeah,
But we haven't tried it before,
We
so
haven't
it's
tried
certainly
it.
something we can look at.
yeah.
You can put in like some kind of materials.
Are there other outfits that, other municipalities that have done that?
For roads that I can think of, but I do think about, I heard about like some of these larger multi-year program, like MedServ clients. I know Steve was thinking about hiring one contractor that we like.
Yeah.
To
We
do
trust
work
to
over
kind of do
several
more
years.
multiple years worth of work.
Yeah.
Under the same contract, hopefully like service lines, for instance.
We've seen some of this with some of the municipal partnering initiative
Yeah.
communities, with, things like sidewalk.
Oh, yes.
And curb, yeah, and so it's not terribly unique. I think we have not done it that way for a variety of reasons, but certainly can look at it, yeah.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
you mentioned was inviting them
worthwhile.
now, maybe.
Yeah, it's something I think that we could talk with our consultant about too, because I mean, they work so much in the industry that they could advise us if they're seeing a trend and going in that direction, and what, talk about the risks.
Just an idea.
Yeah.
If it will help us and help save some money.
So in the contracts, we still have to maintain control of staging the work so that it matches, streets, sewers, water.
Mhm.
But, you can write the contracts to cover that.
For those contract, that would likely be a multi-party contract, depending
Well-
upon how.
Well, you
it's
just need,
structured.
you could do it in a contract, you just need to be willing to say to the outfit that's agreed to do your streets. You still have to wait till we tell you to do it, you have to do it when we tell you and not when it's convenient for you, because we can't have you fix the street, then we have to tear it up because it will work.
Right, that would be on us to.
Yeah, so-
Well, that's a contract, as long as we get the control, so Elra Friedman has to write the contract in a way.
That's how we do it now. That's to put your mind at ease. That is our process. And so as we look, and I would say Monica's point is longer term out into the full 10-year CIP cycle, as we start to stack projects, that's going to very much be a component of the way that contract is drafted, so that it's phased within the contract and then we have the control during the administration of it. I'm not as sure that some of these
Yeah, I would say in
27 and 28.
in this round that we're looking at for street resurfacing, we are strategically looking at the future years of water main replacement, where we're going to be seeing storm or sanitary projects. I don't think we're in a place where we can get ahead and do water main replacements before we resurface streets in 27 and 28, but we're trying to look at them strategically to say the ones that we do now are not also streets that we're going to be replacing within the next 10 years. So we're trying to make those decisions, but we just, for the time being, we're not going to get in front of it. That's to Phil's point, kind of later as we get to this 10 years. Any other questions on those two? Because I do want to talk about a couple changes to the timeline. Just some minor shifts in the CIP timeline. The golf club protective netting and driving range T expansion project that does need to go through our formal SUP process, and so we've submitted an application. It will be on the February zoning board. I want to make sure I'm saying this. The zoning commission, thank you. And then hopefully we'll be able to bring a recommendation to the board in the February agenda, so that's shifted back 1 month. The sanitary sewer rehab, we actually brought that to the board, to you all in December of 2025, so that shifted forward. And then both of the projects we're presenting came together quicker than we anticipated, so those shifted forward as well. Any questions or concerns on the schedule or changes? Thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
Please.
So bonds, everyone's favorite topic. We're finishing strong here. Okay, so you all probably remember that the 2026 budget included $10.4 million in bonds. We had 7 million earmarked for general obligation and 3.4 marked for alternate revenue bonds. Essentially, they act very similar. Now, as a home rule unit, another benefit is that we can streamline that process and issue them all as general obligation bonds. In a weird market right now, it may not matter much, but historically, alternate revenue bonds carry a little bit more risk because you do pledge a revenue to repay those bonds before a tax levy would kick in. So we could see interest rate savings in the long term by issuing general obligation bonds. From an accounting standpoint, underlying, it would work the same way where any water project bonds would be still repaid through water revenue, but we would be able to take advantage of that GO backing, which is, essentially the full faith and credit of the village, where you get a better credit rating for that.
Basis points.
There's times when it's been 50, there's times when it's been 100. It just depends on the, market.
Chunk.
Yes. So it is a benefit to us to do that, and then we can help with the underlying accounting to make sure that everything flows appropriately. So we would still go through the annual abatement process where any tax levy associated with water bonds would be abated. We would repay that through revenue instead of allowing that through the tax levy.
So Nikki, we should try to just keep track to the extent we can say, look what we've saved. So we can say to our residents, we told you when we did home rule that this is something we were trying to accomplish, and we have.
Yeah. All right, we will do that. Are there any concerns with that approach? Issuing that, okay.
And I'm assuming S&P could care less if you call it alternative water bond that's ultimately backed by the general obligation, or call it a GO bond up front. They're treating it as debt. Okay.
They don't care, and as a home rule unit now, we have the
Then I don't
ability to
care.
issue whatever we
I just want to say the money.
Yes.
Good point.
So these bonds will be going to fund a variety of infrastructure improvements. We do still bundle 3 years of projects, just as a matter of practice as we're evaluating the CIP, just to reduce our bond issuance costs and try and do one large issue and spend it over 3 years. That 3-year spending requirement relates to arbitrage, it relates to IRS regulations. We still have to abide by that, home rule or not. So we are planning this out with the 10-year CIP. But we'll have sanitary and storm sewer improvements, street improvements, as Monica just outlined, sidewalk, bicycle paths, and a variety of water main improvements. And this is for the next 3 years. In terms of a timeline, including the packet, we did include a draft timeline of what we are anticipating. On Thursday night's agenda, you'll see a reimbursement resolution. It doesn't need to, but it will go backwards up to 60 days and allow the village to recapture any expenses that we have incurred 60 days backwards from Thursday and up until the point in time that we issue bonds. There is no time frame going forward. So it's important to remember that if we get to the end of this draft timeline and we don't want to issue bonds for one reason or another, or the economy gets weird on us, we can flex that. So the board does not have to approve the ordinance. We don't have to proceed with the sale. We can still modify the back end of the timeline.
By how, what's the limits to that?
There are no limits.
Okay.
Up until, yeah. Now, there may be one thing that I would have to check on is whether or not the rating would expire. If S&P would make
Right.
us renew that. Because that's a monetary issue for them.
Yeah.
I imagine we would be safe probably within the year. So the rating call would not happen until May. Staff will have some administrative work to do up until that point, aggregating all the data for the official statement that will be used to market the bonds for sale. And then the bond sale and ordinance would be tentatively scheduled for approval in June. And then we would receive bond proceeds in July, which was really when the height of construction would likely kick off on a lot of these things. But we do have some projects, some engineering contracts on Thursday night's agenda, as Monica outlined. So we are already starting that CIP spending now. So we did want to get that reimbursement resolution in place to allow us to capture that. Any questions on the proposed timeline?
Anything else? Anyone else? All right. In that case, motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor? Aye. We are adjourned. 6:37. Awesome. Thank you very much. A lot of information. Short.
Margaret, nice job.
Thank you, sir.
It looks like they're gonna issue the bills on March. So